Welcome to True House Stories. I'm Lenny Fontana coming out of New York City. And we are staying in New York City with this particular fella that's coming on. True legend of the game. There was a time when he hailed from the DMV. That's not Department of Motor Vehicles. That's Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C. area. That's about a few decades ago, but in music, it feels like yesterday. Came up to New York, made his name in the music industry, and did some changes that were very, very crucial. You know, he sent me something that AI said, if you know, you know. His mix show became synonymous on one of the best stations in the world, WBLS from New York City. He did it every week, week in, week out, championing the newest of house tracks that he felt that can become timeless. Because I remember asking him that question, and he said to me, just like this, he said, the records I play, I don't want it to be just for the moment. I want you to be able to take a show 10 years that I did, or 10 years prior, or 20 years prior, and be able to play it because I believed in what I played and I knew these records did it right. Okay? You can hear him every week on Sirius XM radio, doing the do. Playing disco, new disco, and house in his set. But without further ado, I'm not going to keep him on the sidelines because he is truly got a hell of a lot to share with us. So I'd like to welcome to the show my man, Charles Dixon.
Hey, man, how are you? Definitely happy to be here, man. It's been a minute. I've known you for forever. I came to New York in 1990, so I was looking at 35 years. And I think I met you when I was at Tommy Boy or when I went to BLS, one of the two.
Both.
You're an incredible DJ as well.
Both. And I remember when you were down in the DC area doing your thing. But I'm not going to spoil you to tell that story. I'm going to ask you one question, then we get started. As everybody knows, no one paints the picture better than the person that lived it. And he's going to paint his picture quite well. And then I will go along and ask questions that are necessary. So currently, right now, how are you doing? Let us know.
I'm doing
What's life like?
I'm doing good. Staying, as relevant as possible. I still do remixes and productions with my production partner, Ricky Nelson. We have a company, Housework, which is the same name that I use for my show on Studio 54 Radio on Sirius XM. But, staying busy and enjoying growing older and wiser. That's kind of like where I am with that. Everything's good.
As all of us know on the inside, Chuck D, Sir Charles Dixon. He's got a lot of great fans that love what he does every week. But let's go back in time to when you were the young Charles.
Okay.
How does music find you, or you find the music?
Well, my interest in music started when I was very young, like in junior high school, and I would watch Soul Train, watch the line dance and the new music. And that was the only time that we could actually see the artists, because we didn't listen to the radio. You didn't know what they looked like until they got on Soul Train. Remember the first time I saw Tina Marie, I was like, wow, I had no idea she was white, but she was incredible. And just being like a young wannabe dancer guy, and I would always go around to the clubs, to parties. I used to love to dance. But then from club to club, the music was so different from different DJs spinning that, sometimes they interrupt your flow. So I said, what, I should learn to DJ, get some turntables, make some little mixtapes, and then I could make a 3-hour, back then 60-minute to 90-minute tape, and I could just dance. So that's how I got into DJing. I wanted to, have a continuous flow of music. That's how I learned how to music, and I could do like these tapes and dance and have a party, and that's how I got into the music. And I would go around to different record shops. I would buy 12-inch dance records. As a matter of fact, Tommy Davis and Teddy Douglas, they worked at two of my favorite record stores in Baltimore. Teddy Douglas worked at Douglas Records, at his family store, and Tommy Davis was at Metro Stereo and Music Liberated in Mondawmin Mall. So I would buy 12 inches, imports, anything they had that I thought I could make a little mixtape with. And then after that, I went on to college. So I started, of course, ended up being like a campus DJ, doing mixes of parties for all the fraternities, sororities, events. I had a little crew called the Maniacs, and we used to do all the parties on campus. And from there, I joined a record pool like around 85 in OMAP record pool. So that's when I learned about the whole DMV, which is DC, Maryland, and the V is Virginia. So I learned about, servicing the top DJs in that area. And that was my first interaction with record labels, because I had to call record labels to get the music for the DJs. And then sometimes I'd have to drop the records off at all the different clubs. So that's how I got into like the record side of it and dealing with the labels. Like 85, I'm calling like Joey Carvello and Dave from Arista Records. And who else was it? It was basically all the legendary promotion. Bobby Shaw, he was at MCA, and I would call these guys and they would send records. And then I started calling Chicago, like Trax Records, DJ International Records. And that's when the house music started flowing in. And then by 87, actually 86, I was the DJ for this club called The Dome. And it was one of the, it was an upstart club, but the audience and crowd was very diverse. I think on a Saturday night, the influx would be like 3,000 people. The club by the end of 86, it was Washingtonian Club of the Year. And from there, I got a job at the radio station in the research department doing call out research, which is really boring. So I told the promotion director that hired me that when the new music director comes to town, have him come down, check me out at the club. So Albie D was the music director. He came down, he checked me out at the club, and he was like, yo, I like what you're doing here. I like your flow of music. It's very diverse. DC is very diverse. Do you think you could do what you're doing on the radio station? I was like, hell yeah. So he hired me to spend Saturday nights on WPGC 95. We were number 22 in the market with like a 1.4 share. And less than 3 years, the station went from number 22 to number 1. And my show was 5 hours live, and I programmed it myself. So being in the record pool and understanding all the different DJs and styles and music and genres, I was able to blend all these different genres together and create a 5-hour mix. I would start with like hip hop and reggae, and I would go all the way up to like classic club. Then I went into like Chicago house and New York club, and I even played techno. So that was, how I was able to build the momentum. And my show, I think by 88, my time slot, Saturday 7 to midnight, went number 1. I actually beat the Quiet Storm in DC because, DC is famous for their Quiet Storm, and all the urban stations after 7, they, play ballads and Smokey Robinson. They break it down. But I was able to beat them with the show, and I played a lot of the early.
Hang on. I want to ask this question. I got to break in. And I remember that because we spoke about this years ago. When you started against the Quiet Storm, what did they tell you? It's not going to work? Is it you're going to fail? Because this is Quiet Storm in that area. That was the number one thing forever.
Even New York Quiet Storm, Frankie Crocker copied DC. DC was first with WHUR. So, being at this new crossover station, my dream was to work with like Donnie Simpson or this other guy, Brute Bailey at DJ 100. So I met with these guys at different events, and I said, look, I'm the DJ at, PGC. I want to come to your station or check your station out. And they all laughed and said, Quiet Storm is the format. It's the culture for decades in DC. A mix show won't work. So I was like, really? So I went back, told Albie what happened. He's like, well, we're going to rock. So that's when I just started going crazy with the mixes and the music and breaking a lot of new music. Because I figured people are listening, so they're so used to hearing the same songs over and over again. So I was incorporating like club music and just anything I could find. I mean, as a matter of fact, by 89, I actually had a show in London on Choice FM out of Brixton. So now I'm getting UK imports, and I would fly to the UK like every season, winter, summer, spring, fall, and bring back like crates of imports. As a matter of fact, when I was there, Jazz Summers, who was at Dome Records, he was actually the manager for Lisa Stansfield when she was in a group, I think it was Blue Oxygen, Cult, something, some name like that, whatever group she was in. And she had just did People Hold On, Cold Cut, and she wanted to break out and do like some R&B. So by her being, white girl from the UK, I think Jazz is like, I don't know if this is going to work, but you have a radio show in DC. Can you test this record? So he literally gave me a 1/2-inch reel to reel of Been Around the World, brought it to the radio station, gave it to Albie D. Didn't tell anybody anything about her. I just said, just listen to this. Albie loved it. He put it in rotation. Because back then it was basically crossover and pop stations versus the urban stations. And WPGC was considered more of a crossover station. And we played like pop music, dance music, whatever. And the urban stations were like, they played like the ballads, and no one was really playing hip hop, but they were R&B intensive. So when we put that Lisa Stansfield record on, everyone went crazy. And they were like, who's this artist? How did you get her? How are they playing the record before we were playing it? And it just like went crazy. And then Jerry Clifton, the consultant, he put the record on like 35 of his crossover stations, and the rest is history. She blew up. She came to the station, thanked us all. But how I got to New York after going number one, I got, you kind of bored. You get in a little place. I was young, energetic. I want to keep it moving. One of the promoters actually was a promotion company that worked with all the labels. Remember SEN, Street Information Network, with Vince Pellegrino. I said, Vince, I'm ready to come to New York. You got to get me out of this city. So he was like, well, there's a job at Tommy Boy, a job at Atlantic Records, and a job at Columbia. I was like, well, you know what? I've never worked at a label before, but I understand the game from being in the record pools. Put me at Tommy Boy, and I'll meet with them and see if you can get me in there. Monica Lynch calls, and Vince sets up a meeting. I take the train up to New York. I talk to Tom and Monica. They hire me, and my job was my title was National Club Promotions Director. So imagine I'm like 23, 24. I think it was 20, maybe 25, 27. I have a national position as my first job. So it was like no internship, just straight into boom. You got to deal with all the record pools, all the DJs, and you have to call the Billboard reporters like Tony Humphreys and, all of them. I can't think of every single name, but every city that had a Billboard reporter, from New York, Chicago, Detroit, Philly, you name it, even DC, because you had Mandrill Harris, I think was the Billboard reporter, and I think Sam Burns was also in that group for DC area. But anyway, I'm calling these guys. First of all, getting them on the phone was insane. So I, built a rapport because I am actually a DJ. Most record promotion people aren't DJs. So having that job was really easy for me because I spoke the language of DJs and how to, play records, break records. We could have shop talk while it wasn't just me calling them and say, "Oh, can you please play my record? I'll get fired if I don't." Or, "What can I do for you? Can I send you a ticket, a trip, or pay your light bill or whatever?" I would have conversations about programming with the DJs. That worked really well.
There's a question. Billboard was a major force for a long time up to COVID, right? How important was that for you doing that promotions job to get your records played by these guys? What does it take to get? Because you're talking about, I'm not giving tickets, I'm not throwing you champagne.
Well, how I would work, we would talk shop. We would talk about records. They would complain about how all the other promoters are calling them, using them, whatever. And I would just say, look, I got these records and, I want you to listen to them. If you don't like them, that's fine. We'll come with something else. One of my favorite stories with Tommy Boy, you got to hear this, is insane. First month on the job, with that Tommy Boy, and funny, Eric Cupper, he worked in the business department. He worked in accounting, and he was, doing some productions. He was doing some, light work mixes, whatever. And I remember, Tom Silverman, and Monica hiring, I think Tom Richardson was, okay. They basically hired Justin Strauss to do a remix on Cubics, 808 State. So I came in, I didn't know anything about what was going on. So I was like, okay, Cubics, 808 State. I wasn't really feeling Justin's mix. I thought it was okay, but Tom hated it and Monica hated it. So that was that. So once again, I didn't know what was going on. So I'm hanging out with Eric, because he used to help me with my my expenses. So Eric one day, he goes, "Charles, let's go to the Red Zone." I'm like, "The Red Zone with Frankie Knuckles and Dave Morales? I'd love to meet them. I want to meet them." So we met there, and I'm like all proud. Let me go to the DJ booth. I see Frankie sitting down in a chair, and Dave Morales is spinning. This will be great. I can tell them that I'm the new rep at Tommy Boy. So I get to the booth, and I see Dave, and I know he's doing a blend. So I'm like, I don't want to interrupt him. I'll wait until he acknowledges me, and then I'll tell him what I got to say. So the record comes in, and he looks over to me like, what do you want? So I tell him, I'm the new rep at Tommy Boy Records. I want to get to know you guys. I like what you're doing. I'm a big fan. And he just like kind of looks at me and kind of like just shuts me down. He gave me this stare, like, get out of my booth stare. So, me coming from where I came from, I was like, wait a minute, this dude is like coming at me like this. What's wrong? Frankie Knuckles noticed that there was a little tension there. He immediately stepped in and he said, look, we got an issue with Tommy Boy. We did a remix for 808, whatever. And we got our front end. We didn't get our back end. We finished the mix. So we're in a lawsuit with Tommy Boy. So I'm like saying to myself, I just moved up to New York with like 30,000 records. I'm not taking those records back to DC. So I was like, well, what do I have to do? Who do I have to talk to? But once again, I'm like 26 years old. So Frankie goes, Judy Weinstein, she's our manager. You got to deal with her, but we can't really talk to you about anything. Then I was like, okay, that's why Dave did that, because he can't talk to me. So give me the address. I'll come see her tomorrow. So he's like, okay. It wasn't tomorrow. It was like Monday. Monday, before I get to work, I go down to Judy's, to Def Mix office. I was like, so Judy, what's up with my records? And she looks at me like I'm this little kid. And she's like, well, we're in a lawsuit with them, and we can't talk about it. And until they pay us, all those records back there are not going in the bins. As a matter of fact, just stop sending us records. So I was like, whoa, this is my favorite record pool in the world. This is, for the record. I was like, I need them for my career. I was like, serious. When you're young, like 26, everything is like so important, like do or die. So
well, also you gotta explain to everybody that record pool had all the main guys.
Yeah. Oh, it's the number one record pool in New York. You got the Def Mix crew. You got, Frankie Knuckles. You got Dave Morales. You got Satoshi Tomi. You got, just you name it. They're in the pool. If they're in New York and they're a top DJ or producer, they're in that pool. And then they're also part of Def Mix. And to me, it was the number one record pool in the world for servicing the top DJs in the whole New York area. To have a beef with them is like earth shattering for my career. I go to Tommy Boy the next day. We have our little staff meetings, and I'm the new guy around the round table. We go around what's happening in this part, what's happening in A&R, what's happening in video. Okay, Charles, what's happening in promotion? I said, I got an issue with For the Record. Actually, I didn't say For the Record. I said, yeah, For the Record and Def Mix. I said, we owe them a back end of, I think it was like $7,500, and we need to pay them because they're not distributing our records, and I need them. And Tom just like goes, no, we're not paying them. We paid them their front end. Which is what we're supposed to do. We didn't accept the record, so we don't pay them the back end. I said, well, I understand what you're saying, but I need that record pool. They're key in everything that I'm doing. I got to be able to say, New York is behind this record, and I need all these other cities. That's how you do promotion. So he was like, well, I'm not going to do it. He said, and I said, look, we need to do it. And then, Tom, he's like, well, we'll take it out of your salary. So I said, okay. We could do that. I said, don't take it out all at once. Can I do like partial payments? And the whole room just started laughing. Tom was like, he turned around. I knew he was mad, but I said, I have to bring a little humor into this because I was getting mad. I was like, I don't want to be upset with my boss. Meeting was over. And I told Monica, Monica, we got to make this happen somehow. As most record company meetings go, the next week, everything that was an issue the week before disappears because we've got a new set of issues to deal with. So now we have a meeting about De La Soul. And Roller Skating Jam called Saturdays was going to be single. It's like 114 beats per minute. So that's kind of up-tempo. So he's like, Charles, can you get this rap record on Billboard? I said, I could get a top 5 record out of this if I can get the right remixes. He said, well, who do you have in mind? I said, I think Dave Morales should do the remix. And they knew Dave, but they didn't really connect Dave to For the Record or Def Mix, which was funny to me, but they knew of his work. and he was a big DJ. They said, you can get Dave? I said, yeah, let me just talk to them, see how we can work this out. So I go back to Judy and I said, Judy, I called you and said, I'm going to get you your money. And she just laughed at me and hung up the phone. So I called her back and I said, Judy, how much do you charge for a remix? And she said, Charles, I told you we're not dealing with Tommy. I said, look, that's not what I asked you. I asked you, how much do you charge? You said, we're about 15 grand. It's okay. So I'm going to get you 15 grand. Plus I'm going to get you the 7,500 that we owe you. And you're going to put all those records in the bin and you're going to cancel the lawsuit or, whatever. So she starts laughing and hangs the phone up. So the next meeting, I said, Monica, I can get Dave Morales, but he's going to be like maybe 50 grand. She's like, really? I said, but I can get him for 23 grand if I get the whole check right now. So Monica goes in Tom's office, comes back, check for 23 grand. I get the check, get on a train, run to Judy's office, hand her the check, and like, okay, put all my records in the bin. And she just starts laughing. I said, drop the lawsuit. And they put the records in the bin, dropped the lawsuit, and everything was good. So then the next day I get a call and it's David Morales. He's like, so Charles, man, I never really did a rap record. So how do you want it? So I was like, it's roller skating jam called Saturday. Give me like 3 a.m. in the morning when people are like in a daze, but they're still dancing and the vibe is real chill. And just use Eric Couple, Satoshi Toby on keyboards and do what you do. Do what you do. So a couple days later, he sends me the Roller Skate Jam remix classic. This is incredible. And as a matter of fact, that mix that he did got me number 2 on Billboard Dance. And then we were friends ever since. But that's just kind of like what I would do as a promoter talking to DJs. I know their concerns because I had the same concerns.
So you had 2 big major problems. One, you need all metropolitan area tri-state DJs that are in for the record to have your records in plural S. Tommy Boy Records, Fitz, 808 State, or whatever it may be. You need those records to be able to do the job.
Exactly.
But the catch is you worked with 2 of the most shrewdest in the business.
Yep.
Tom Silverman is tight as a seal. And Judy Weinstein's a stickler to getting her coins.
Exactly.
How the hell did you figure out to play them that you knew that you weren't going to get your ass handed to you on a frying pan? Because that's a big risk you did take. It's a big risk.
Label, like I said, I grew up in Baltimore, so we're pretty much fearless. And I know that everyone was intimidated by that worked at the company, but I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm going to be the one that's not intimidated. And usually people that are intimidating don't really want to be feared. They want to be more respected. But Tom is a super intelligent, genius type of guy. So it has to make sense. It has to be logical. And Monica was very passionate and ambitious. And she was like a bridge between me and Tom. And, I think she knew what was going on, but she didn't really reveal that, but she had to know that Death Mix and For the Record, Judy, she knew all of that. Getting that money and taking care of that situation, it really helped us because we were coming with TKA. I had Julian Jump Perez doing remixes on TKA record. We had Information Society. So we had records that were dance club, Billboard dance friendly. And I needed all those records played and I got them played. A lot of it's the psychology. When you are in a position that I was in as a national guy, you have to be able to manage your managers and understand what their concerns are. And that helped me when I was at I learned that at PGC when I was dealing with Albie D and Bob Mitchell and Jerry Clifton and these guys. As a DJ, I learned to speak that radio language. Like I could talk about time spent listening and target demo to audience. So when we have a record meetings, I'm not all passionate, like, oh, we need this record. It's hot in the streets. Everybody loves it. No, I was never like that. I was like, we need this record because it appeals to our target demo of women 32 to 50 or whatever, or 18 to 34, young, women, whatever. And they would listen to what I had to say and they figure, well, he speaks our language, so he must be right. So I took that with me to New York in dealing with, even dealing with the DJs. Like I understand what their concerns were and what they want. They figured if Charles is playing a record, he's spinning on the radio. Cause that was another good thing. By the time I got the Pendulum records, I was at BLS. So that was 92. We had the thunderstorms and I had a very unique position because how I got the Pendulum records was Judy Weinstein called Dennis Wheeler because they were really good friends. And Dennis was at Pendulum. Dennis, formerly worked at Warner Brothers with Madonna and Benny Medina. Dennis left to head up Pendulum with Ruben Rodriguez, and Dennis got the call from Judy. Judy was like, I got a guy for you. You need this guy. You got a new label startup. He's the guy you need to get your company going. She called Dennis, and Dennis called me a Tommy Boy, and they offered me a deal I couldn't refuse. It was almost 3 times what Tommy Boy was paying me. So I was like, I'm out. So everyone was saying, like, Charles, you don't know these people. You need to get a lawyer. You need to do this, that, and the third. And I was like, look, if this guy Ruben and this guy Dennis want to pay me almost 3 times what I'm making here, and when I'm at Tommy Boy, they don't see the value that people outside of the company see, I don't need a contract. I mean, if they agree to pay me what they agreed to pay me, they're going to pay me what they said they're going to pay me. And that was it. I left. And then I guess Tom figured out what I was actually doing after I left, and he wanted me to come back. I was like, nope, I'm a man of my word. If I say I'm leaving, I'm leaving. But I told Tom if he needed me to help him until they get another person to replace me, I'll work that out. I'll help them. And sure enough, one day he called me and he said, Charles, we haven't filled your position yet. We got 3 releases. Can you talk to your boss to help us set up the promotion? So I went to Rube and I said, Rube, Tom still needs me to help. They haven't replaced me yet, and I want to help them. He was like, you got to be kidding. You're working for us. I say, look, we're a startup label. We got what, Henji and Evil Lee, Chris Walker, and I think Tanae Williams. Like, I need to do this mailing for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the Tommy Boy mailing, but I'm going to put the Pendulum records in the Tommy Boy sleeve. So at least people will open it and then at least get a chance to hear these records we got until we can do something else. And he just like laughed and said, oh, okay, cool. So now Tom is paying me a consulting fee while I'm getting a salary from Pendulum. So, it's like the game is psychological, bro. You just have to understand what people want and give them what they want. And if everybody's winning, I just try to create win-win situations. And sure enough, that worked out. So Ruben gave me this new artist, Tanae Williams, and he was like, I want you to A&R this project. So being the house club guy that I am, I'm like, you know what? I'm really impressed with what Steve So Curly is doing and what he did with CeCe Peniston with Keep On Walking. I think I need that sound. So I called up Steve, and then Steve put together a team with Steve, Maurice Joshua, and E Smooth. And I think Jamie Principal and another writer. I know Steve's wife was writing as well. But anyway, so I let them do half the album. And we had a song, Give 'Em a Love, and we had house club mix of it, like Chicago remix. And then we had a CeCe Peniston type of vibe mix for Give 'Em a Love. And it went to number 2 on Billboard. I'm able to make a dent in that market and get more work. And down the line, Melissa Morgan comes up with a track.
Let me ask this question. Hang on, because you're doing promotions for the new Pendulum, correct?
Right. I was promotions, A&R, and street. I was everything.
So you were hired in as doing A&R as well.
Yeah, I was hired as doing A&R, but they needed someone to do promotions. Ruben was like,
that's how you got the Chicago camp to get involved, because you hand walked it in.
I was A&R in today's project, and I was like I said, when I did so Ruben's like, who's this guy, Steve Hurley? I said, doesn't matter who he is. This guy has 23 number 1 Billboard productions, and I said, to me, he's the guy that put Chicago dance or Chicago house music on the map, because I studied his whole history, how Jack Your Body went to number 1 on Top of the Pops. And that started the whole craze of UK companies licensing music directly from Chicago and creating a vibe to the point where people thought house music, Chicago house music came from the UK, because the mom and pop stores were promoting the music that was licensed, I guess, through Me/Dem. And that's how that whole thing just blew up. So Steve was a major catalyst that I don't think he gets complete credit for that, but his mixes were commercial. They were Billboard number 1. So I told Ruben, Here are the facts. This is the guy I want for this record. He was like, cool. And then later on, Marley Marl did a remix for Lisa Morgan's record. And she had another record, an Al Green remix called Still in Love. So because Pendulum was going through Elektra Records, I called Leslie Dorr and like, Leslie, what are we doing? She's like, I think we should do a remix. And I can get, Masters at Work to do a remix. I was like, bet, let's get them. So she sets up the meeting, she sets up the deal. I think they wanted like back in 91, 92, 93, remix fees for house remixes like 25 grand. We agreed on that. And Ruben was like, 25 grand for a remix? I'm like, no, that's the cost. Don't worry. I'll get it on Billboard. We'll get it popping. Don't worry. Leslie sends me over the mix. And it's literally a dub going, don't you know? Don't you know? And the drums and almost no lyrics. I was like, Ruben is not going to understand this. So I called Louis and I said, look, man, I need a version that tells a story, that has more of the vocals in it. And I want the song to start like the single starts with those strings. So you won't even know it's the house mix until that first snare hits like 123 beats per minute. And they laughed. They're like, this isn't going to work in the clubs. I'm like, trust me, it's going to work. It's going to work. It's going to be a set changer. So when the DJs want to switch up from whatever genre they're playing, play this, the strings will be there. Melissa's vocals come in, and then that snare hit, and then there'll be a club mix and the drums come in. But I want samples, more vocal samples in the record. I want it to be closer to the original, but tell a story with the sample chops. And he was like, all right, whatever. So I wasn't sure that he's going to follow. So I went to the studio. It was late. I had worked all day. I was tired as hell. I actually fell asleep in the studio. Kenny Dope woke me up. He's like, listen to this. I think this is what you want. And that was a Still in Love remix. They did it perfectly. Like they put their magic into it. And I think Todd Terry actually did some of the drum programming because that was part of Magic Sessions where you had Lenny, you had Louis, Kenny, and then Todd was doing some of the drums. So when that record became a classic, once again, number 2 on Billboard. I never had to.
Did Melissa Morgan, wait a minute, hold on, Charles. Morgan like it when she heard it? That's what I want to ask.
That's another funny story. I'm excited about the record. Dennis is excited about the record. Ruben was like, whatever, okay, it sounds okay to me. I don't know what this stuff is, but it's okay. I asked Dennis what Melissa thought about it. And she goes, oh, Melissa's so upset, So I was like, upset? Let me talk to her. And so I saw her in the hallway and she's like, that wasn't the concept of the record. That was a tribute to Al Green. You put this dance stuff on there and that's not what it is. You ruined the song. I'm like, the song is charting. It's number 2 on Billboard. Like, this is a good thing. It's another impression. She just stormed off. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever. So after I left Pendulum, still DJing on BLS. I still have my show in the UK. I go to MCA Records and once again, head of club. Actually, I created a job title at MCA. My title was Senior Director of DJ Marketing and Promotion. Once again, that was psychological. Because if that's my title as a Senior Director, then that means anything that marketing does with a 12-inch, anything that A&R does with a 12-inch, any promotion does with 12, or even down to the artwork, they have to go through me first. I have to approve it. I have to approve all the 12-inch. I remember I wanted all our sleeves to be bright fluorescent orange or green so that they could find it in the stack of records. Got that approved. I had to get 12 signatures on that. So anyway, so I get this call from my former assistant / intern. And he's calling from Rockefeller. And he's like, Charles, Jay-Z wants to come out with Can't Knock the Hustle and Mary J. Blige is on the record. And we need to get the clearance because all the stuff that we did for you got for MCA with Shy and all the raps that Jay-Z did and productions, he feels like you should clear it. I said, well, first of all, you got to tell Jay and Dame that that's never going to happen because we're coming with a new Mary J. Blige album, Share My World album. And, that is not going to work because we're not going to compete with Rockefeller on this record. So I said, but I got a solution for you. I said, the sample in Can't Knock the Hustle is Melissa Morgan's record. You should just get Melissa Morgan. And that was her biggest hit. And you should go with that. So they were like, you can get Melissa? I'm like, I think I can. So I called Dennis at Pendulum. That's like, Dennis, I need you to talk to Melissa Morgan because Jay-Z wants her to do, to redo her song. They cleared a sample from Mary J. Blige. I said, I think, Melissa would sound better on the track anyway. So he goes, well, I'll talk to Melissa, but I think you should talk to Melissa. I was like, Dennis, we had this conversation before. She's not going to want to talk to me about anything because of the Still in Love record. So, and this record is like her, her big hit. So he was like, okay, I'm going to give you her number. You call her. If she doesn't want to talk to you, then I'll talk to you. So, okay, whatever. So I called Melissa and, she has a little voice. Hi, Charles. How you doing? She was so nice. I was like, okay, this is weird. So I said, did Dennis tell you what I need you for? And she was like, yeah, you want me to do, go and do my record. And I was like, yeah, so you cool with that? She's like, you know what, Charles, let me just tell you what happened with the Still in Love record. So she was married, got out of her marriage with, I think, Shelley Garrett, the play writer that had, Shelley Garrett Productions. They did the Beauty Shop record, a Beauty Shop play that toured. And she said, well, when we split, I moved back home and I didn't have the income I needed. I needed to, pay my bills, take care of everything. I didn't want to go into my savings, whatever. So I was like, okay, so what happened? She said she got a call from the UK. They wanted her to come to the UK and tour doing Still in Love House remix. She said, Charles, I went out there. I made so much money. She's like, whatever you need me to do, we good. You were right. The record was, what it was. Boom. So I was like, cool. So called Irv Gotti, who was doing A&R for this project. I think he produced the record too. And Irv was like, you got Melissa Morgan? Bring it out to the studio. So I said, Melissa, how much do you want? She said, what they paying. I was like, well, how much you want? She said, well, if I'm just going to do, some vocal dubs and ad libs, whatever, in that little part, to get me like, for $4,000 or something. I was like, okay. So I called Irv. I said, Irv, we're going to need 8,000 in cash when we get there because Morgan don't play. So we get there. They had the money, gave it to Melissa. And she said, Irv was like, we got 3 hours of studio time. We're going to be in and out. So Melissa goes, I don't need 3 hours. I need about 25 minutes and I'll do extra ad libs and some alternative stacks for you as well. And she said, cause I'm hungry. I want to go to the restaurant and get something to eat. So in like 20 minutes, she did the background vocals, the lead, stacked everything. Everything was perfect all in one take. And they were blown away. They was like, damn. So Irv was like, yo, if you ever want to do an album with me, come back. But that was just like a really cool story. And recently that Can't Knock the Hustle version actually went gold. So Melissa got, gold record for a performance on the record. And the song was Fool's Paradise. That was a sample that was in it. Melissa's big records. That was cool. So it was like another situation solved. But like I said, my whole career has just been about problem solving. When I grew up, I was a really nerdy kid that studied engineering. And what I learned from engineering before I decided to be a DJ was problem solving.
So since you're an engineer, how did you engineer yourself onto BLS while this was all going on and creating the style that you wanted to prove in New York? Because that's a big part of your life. That's a funny part.
Funny story. So based on my success in DC with WPGC, the consultant, Jerry Clifton, was, I guess he was always impressed with what I was able to do in the city because it's just like, we were number one in less than 3 years. It's unheard of. So I get this call at Pendulum Records. I'll never forget it. And it was Jerry Clifton on the other phone. He goes, this is Sir Charles. I'm like, yeah. He goes, yeah, this is Jerry Clifton. I thought it was a joke. So I was like, okay, Jerry Clifton has never called me on the phone. So someone is playing with me. So I'm going to play along with it so I won't be mad. I was like, yeah, hey, Jerry, what you want? So he goes, you want to mix again? I'm like, yeah, what you got? You want me to come back to DC? He goes, no. He said, I'm in New York now. I'm the consultant for WBLS, the new station, the new format called The Vibe 107.5. So I was like, so now I'm like, okay, this is real. Because how would someone playing a joke would even know that? Because that wasn't really announced at that time. So this is like fall of 92. So I was like, hell yeah. He said, well, Quincy McCoy is the program director. And I told him that because I knew you would take the job. He said, I told him that you're going to be on his team and you need to go meet with him. I said, when? He said, go now. I said, oh, I'm at work. He's like, okay, go now. So I went dorms, going to be with Clay Berry, give a 2-hour show on Saturday from 12 to 2. And a thunderstorm can happen at any minute. So you'll be randomly running from Pendulum to BLS to do mixes at any time. We'll give you like an hour to get there. I was like, all right, bet I could do that. Always have my records with me. It's cool. I got them in my office. So that was the start of it. And then after about 6 months, they made me the head mixer and they told me to, rebuild the team, enhance the team, run the players. So I was inspired to DJ, when I first started by Grandmaster Flash. And Grandmaster Flash was on a mic check show in Hot 97 with Melly Mel and him. And I think him and Melly had some sort of beef. They split. So I called him up. I said, look, man, I can get you on BLS. And if I get you, I want you to do the 5 o'clock traffic jam, kind of similar to what I was doing in the UK. But I want you to, do that jam. He's like, I never played on radio. I was like, dude, easy. No problem. You can do it. So he goes, well, will I be able to play new music? I said, nope. I want you to play. I said, hip hop is sample heavy right now. All the classics have samples in it. I want you to do a show every day from 5 to 6, playing the original records from all the samples of all the records that are coming out. He was like, for us, I said, dude, you do that, you'll go number one. Because these kids, they don't know that Mary J. Blige record is Chaka Khan and Real Love is Patrice Rushen. They don't know this stuff. They think all these records coming out are the artists. So he's like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And within 3 months, one book, he was number one on BLS from his time slot from 5 to 6. And then I brought on DJ Premier and called Premier. I said, Premier, I want you to do a hip hop set Friday from, I think 9 to 11. And he was like, Charles, I don't mess with radio. Radio's too restricting. I'm a free spirit. I like to play what I want to play. I like to do what I like to do. I said, well, if I get you a show where you can play with anything you want to play, but you can't play anything with curses, would you do it? And he starts laughing. He's like, Charles, it's not going to happen. I was like, trust me, I can sell it. He said, so you want to get me a show where I can play whatever I want, new stuff, unreleased? I said, whatever you want, 2 hours. And he laughed. So once again, the psychology kicks in. I go to my program director and I said, I want to put DJ Premier on from 9 to 11. But the concept I want for him is I want him to do, like, when you listen to these movie soundtracks and the movie score, I want him to do the soundtrack of New York. I don't want him to play anything that's familiar because he's doing a score for 2 hours. So I'm telling you, it's going to work. And Quincy laughs. He's like, well, if it don't work, that's on you. I was like, it's going to work. Trust me. So I go back to me. I was like, look, you can play whatever you want, but you can't play anything that's familiar or new or crossover. He starts laughing. He's like, for real? I was like, trust me, you can do whatever you want. So he starts playing and he kills it. Once again, he's number one. He's playing music, production, edits, remixes. He was catching all the curses live. Like they come in the vinyl. Vinyl spins around to a curse word. He would catch it and scratch the curse word. I don't even know how he was doing it, but he did that live, no edits. So that worked out really well for him. And then when it was time for him to go on tour with Gangstar, he put together a superstar team of DJs that he wanted to replace him. So I had to go back to the PD. Okay, Premier's going on tour. I don't want to put another DJ in the slot. I want him to pick his team and then I can help him, manage it. So, from Stretch Armstrong to Pete Rock, you name it. Every who's who DJ in New York now had a shot to have our set or BBLS. So, and that's how I was able to bring in Jazzy Joyce. That was her first radio gig too. I coached them, just tell them, what to play, tell them the rules. Don't let the labels play you and offer you anything to play these records. You do what you do. And that's how Joyce started. And then she ended up doing Ladies Night on Hot 97. But, so that's pretty much the story with that. Jerry Clifton knew me from DC and he was a consultant for BLS. So that's how I got on BLS radio. Because everyone was wondering how the hell this guy from DC not only get on the station, but become like the head mixer.
Right. Because that's not something that normally happens. No. Normally you're there to produce your show and produce it, do what you do. Were you also involved with, around that time would be John Robinson as well, and Timmy
John was
Regis.
there, and I just told John, look, you're already grandfathered into the equation. You got the midday mix. Just do what you do, and whatever you need from me, just let me know. And it worked out really well. He was doing it until his accident. So
I know, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. It happened in London.
When someone's doing their thing and they're creative, I'm not like a micromanager. If anything, I'm going to try to make it more of what they want than less of what they want or more of what I want. I want them to win. And if, I want to inspire
They
them.
win. If they win, you win.
Exactly.
So your tenure at BLS goes till, and you could say that, and then how Sirius happens as well. And as well, on that same token, the record industry that we remember it, the analog business changes.
Right.
Which you're changing it. There's a few things going on all around the same time. So complete on. Let us know.
Well, the whole thing with BLS, I started there from 92 to 95. And then I started just doing some international remix show, like Super Radio, Mixed America. I was with this group, Mixed America. So from 95 to like 90, I was still doing my show, but it was more like the Sir Charles show. And I would do stuff for like the UK, like Music Choice UK or Mixed America or even Super Radio. And then this guy, Clint Works, he had one of the first internet radio shows that was streaming. So I played for him. And then in 98, Damon Williams brought me over to Music Choice. And Music Choice at the time had 11 million subscribers, and they were in 11 million homes. And then they did a thing with digital cable and satellite. So that increased it to like 35 million. So he wanted me to be the first DJ to have a mix. So I told him I'll do like R&B, club, house, whatever. He wanted me to do like a 90s mix called the Throwback Jam. So I could play hip hop and I could play R&B and house music. So that was kind of cool. So I did that from 98 to like 2013. And then I actually came back to BLS in 2009. Skip Dillard was also from WPGC at the time. He got the job at BLS, and he brought me in to do a mix after Louis Vega from 1 to 2. So I did that from 2009 to 2021 when Funk Flex called me and said there was too much house music on BLS, which I thought was kind of crazy, but I was like, whatever. So Geronimo, who used to be a DJ, air personality on BLS back in the Thunderstorm days, we had a great rapport. I found out he was the head of the dance music division for Sirius. So he was like, well, Charles, I'll introduce some people here. If they like you, then you're good. But I can do that for you. But I don't really make my team do what I want them to do. I let them, and I understand that principle because I'm the same way. So basically, he introduced me to his program director for Studio 54 Radio, and we hit it off really well. A half an hour conversation we had ended up being 3 hours. He was like, "You're on." He said, "But there's one more catch. The people that created Studio 54 Radio, Mark and Myra. Mark was he was the bouncer with the red velvet rope, and Maya worked directly with the owner. She did promotions and accounting and anything. She was like business affairs for Studio. So they interviewed me live like this, like a streaming, and they was like, "Why should we put you on?" And I told them, I like listening to Studio 54. It brings back a lot of memories of all the classics, but there's only been so many classics, and I think my show would be all the classics, the remakes of the classics, the new genre, new disco, which is like samples, jacking format from Chicago, where it's chopped up samples, and then remakes of the classics, as well as new music that sounds like the old music. Because I had to remind them, I said, when Studio 54 ended like around 87, freestyle was big. So people don't try to not to remember that part that, all the clubs was playing like Cover Girls and TKA and Information Society back in that during that time period. So I said, if Studio 54 was still open today, how would it sound? I said, so my show would be how it would sound if it was still open. So I sent them a demo tape and they were like, "You're our guy." And that was the rest is history. I'm going into my fifth year now with Sirius, and I love it. I love working with the team. They let me, I don't ever get any of those promo calls of like, "What are you playing?" They let me program my show, and, it's been great. And I've been getting gigs all over the country, all over the world. I did a couple things with Canada. We're going to do some Detroit gigs. I got Chicago stuff coming up. I got some things in Florida, like all the markets where where Sirius XM is hot. I'm getting offers. And as a matter of fact, I'm looking for an agent because it's a lot of, when you're the talent, you can't really book yourself. It sounds crazy because they say, okay, with all your experience and all you've been DJing and everything you've been doing, how come you don't have a manager? And I tell them, well, I just never really had a manager or an agent. They go, so then in their mind, they're like, okay, this guy is probably a problem because nobody wants to work with him. But that's not even the case. The case is just, I just never did that. I never went down that road because I was always multitasking in different careers. Like I'm probably one of the only DJs, producers that actually worked at labels and promotion and A&R and marketing, set meetings at the labels and then run to the radio station for another meeting. Like it was a really unique position to be in radio and records at the same time for so many years. For at least 20 years, I did both. So, like I said,
well, that makes you more, a person that actually has management skills, A&Ring skills, radio programming skills, so you can be a programmer. And that's the problem when you know too much. You probably know more than the management knows at times,
In most cases, because, a lot of people in the industry, in corporate, they climb the ladder. I don't climb the ladder. I am the ladder. So it's like, that's always the issue. So I've been in situations where people were intimidated by me because I knew more about their job than they did, because they got the job through nepotism or because they just knew how to work the room. But for me, it's like, I love music. Music is my purpose. So once you figure that out, like I literally left University of Maryland after having an internship at Unilever. It's coming to a $10 billion company. And I interned there as in the chemical engineering department. Decided I wanted to be a DJ. Can you imagine how crazy that was? My girl at the time looked at me, I was crazy. My friends, my family said, wait a minute, you're leaving engineering and a shoe in to Unilever to be a club DJ? I was like, that's my passion.
Yes. Yes, I'm leaving, and I'm leaving quickly. And I'm leaving quickly with a quickness.
The engineering part was just so boring. Like I felt like getting through engineering, getting through college, getting through high school in engineering, it was always music that saved me. And music has no age limit. It has no ceiling. You can DJ until you won't want to DJ anymore. You can be a DJ when you're in your 70s or 80s.
It's very true. Hal Jackson was on the air to his 90s. Remember, Hal Jackson on BLS was an institution.
Absolutely.
As long as you got the health, you got wealth, right?
Exactly. It keeps you young. Like people, have no idea sometimes how old I am, but the music keeps me young. So that's how I do it. But
there is no age. There is no age of house music.
So I wanted to be at a place where there's no politics or glass ceilings, where I could just, be as creative as I want. And as long as it makes sense, and as long as there's a win-win, I can always create a win-win situation for any position I'm in. It just works out. You got to go with your passion. When you're passionate about something, you'll do it 24 hours, 7 days a week. Like I'm not like, oh, I can't wait till the weekend where I don't have to do this job, because I'm always in the music. I mean, I'm on Shazam like all day, everywhere I go, just listen to music. And my iTunes and TrackSource bill is out of this world. Like I buy music almost every day because I'm not a streaming guy. I don't want to be in a situation where I didn't pay my bill or I don't like the service anymore and I want to get out of it and I lose all my music. So I have all my files. Like, I like to have the files and I like to support the artists. I'd rather than make money off me buying a MP3 than them getting 18 cents for a stream or whatever it is now. I think it was like 0.0058 of a penny or something for a stream. You had to get like a billion streams to make some money. So I'd rather just support artists that way.
Can you take your ethos of what you did and make it work in today's business, in the recording business, like record business, whatever's left of it?
Well, I think what's important, and with AI coming in the way it's coming in, when I think of AI, like a lot of people hate it, a lot of people think it's cheating, but I mean, they felt that way about auto-tune, they felt that way about CDJs. That's always going to be the case when something new comes in, and it's a matter of how can you use it to your advantage as a just like when controllers came in and CDJs came in, and people say, "Oh, vinyl's the real DJ," and you're not a real DJ if you're using a controller, blah 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 blah. But the DJs that learned on vinyl, the DJs that learned on vinyl, DJ on vinyl, their skills are enhanced when they go and they spin with CDJs. So that's the same thing how I feel with AI. And I think that when I look back at the 90s, I look at how much sampling was done in the 90s, the hip hop records. And like I said before, Mary J. Blige. So now the labels, remember about 6 years ago, everyone was selling their catalog. Remember that whole rush where it was like, oh, I got 10 million from a catalog, got 100 million from a catalog. Queen sold their catalog for $1 billion to Columbia Records. And they basically bragged that, in 5 or 6 years, they'll make the $1 billion back. And what I think people didn't realize what was happening was they were training AI with these catalogs. Because it wasn't just record labels that were buying this music. It was just like all sort of investment companies, whatever. And they've been using it to train AI. So in the future, just for example, they could say, okay, AI, I want to create a song with the passion of Michael Jackson, the vocal ability of Whitney Houston, with the musicality of Prince. And boom, you're going to have a record just like that. So that's the scary part of it. But when I look at some of these reality shows like The Voice and Idol, and we're talking about artists that have been vetted to get on the show, outperforming their entire city, their entire state, just to get those slots on these shows. And most of those artists that are super talented, amazing vocals, whole nine, they're not getting record deals. And the top 10 artists usually get signed to the company. I think at one point, BMG and J Records, they had all the Idol artists. And then I think The Voice was Universal. And then X Factor, I think that was Sony. So once you reach the top 10, you have to sign with them just in case you blow up or whatever. But, when I look at artists like Jennifer Hudson, who came from that world, and I think she's a perfect example. Jennifer Hudson come from that, but not too many other artists. I think Kelly Clarkson, I think she was on Idol, one of those shows as well. But it's only a few of them that really get signed and get deals compared to a lot of artists that get signed that aren't as talented vocally or musically as some of the artists on these shows. So what I think is going to happen is now that the labels don't really have to pay artists and they can create their own artists to a certain extent, they have more money, more budget to just, have these records down people's throats. When the AI, because, the labels are buying up these or doing deals with AI. Warner Brothers just did something with Suno and it's another, and I think, I can't think of all the deals that are happening off the top of my head, but the record labels are merging and doing deals with the AI companies. So what that's going to do is they're going to pretty much own all the music. And then I heard Netflix is starting a label too. So Netflix is going to probably do exclusive deals with artists where they control everything. But the bottom line is for the artists that are really talented, really gifted, the producers and songwriters that do really well, they're going to be able to do covers how hip hop uses samples or the records. In other words, let's say an AI artist through one of those companies has a number one record and it's everywhere. Artists that's super talented can actually perform because I've seen some of these AI productions. I mean, the way the vocals flow with the song that the artist wrote is crazy in terms of like breathing, phrasing. It's really complicated. Like you really have to be able to sing to compete with AI. And there are artists out there that can do it. So imagine artists doing a cover of an AI record. And just like how Mary J. Blige did, Sweet Thing, or Chaka Khan's Real Love, which was her record that blew her up. Or any of these artists that do remakes of artists, or even Whitney Houston doing Dolly Parton's I Always Love You. Like covers are always cover of a hit song is familiar when an artist is really talented, does that cover. they make that cover their own. I think that's the future of the game. I think that's where it's going to go. And artists that are like so-so or not as talented, they're not going to be able to compete with AI like artists that have that gift that are really being overlooked now, because you have artists that I call social media promoted artists that, they get 1 million followers and they get a record deal. And then that's when the work starts. When, okay, now we got to turn this social media artist into a real artist. And that's a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of promotion, whatever. That's the way I see it going. I think at the end of the day, streaming is really more of a promotional tool to create multiple impressions as an artist, so you can get shows, you can create your brand, you can come out with your clothing line and your liquor company and all of that. But it starts with the multiple impressions and building your brand. And there's no real money in streaming, but like I said, the advantage of streaming is that's your little 5-minute commercial. That's your ticket for people to become familiar with your sound and with your music, and then you go from there. And people put a lot of effort. Oh, come with my single. But you have to have a strategy. Okay, you got a new record. How are you going to get it out? And the craziest thing, Lenny, I'm going into year 39 of spinning on radio formats, and I don't get any record promo calls. I get links to.
There is nobody calling. There is nobody calling
because they don't have anybody that can like what I used to do. I would have those conversations with DJs. We'd talk about life and music and whatever.
But no, now it's an in-flight. No, it's in-flight now. You get an in-flight email to your account, and it's all the promos are there.
Yep. But you don't get the stories. You don't get the who's this artist and where they're from and what they like and how are they to work with. And you don't get those type of stories that I used to tell with all the artists I promoted. That's how I got records played. I would talk about the artists, and I would talk about where they're from and what my goal is and what I think about the record or whether I think it could work. You don't get those conversations, so you don't build that, rapport with the DJ to even play the record.
Well,
I pride myself. I like playing new music. Like my show that I played today at 11 a.m. on Fridays. I put a lot of new music in it. Mickey Afleck called me and she's like, can you play this record? And I was like, if I like it, if it fits in what I'm doing, I play it. If it doesn't, I won't play it. And what she sent me, because she listens to my show, it fit into what I was doing. So it was easy. Boom. Or the record that you did. When I heard that record, I was like, this is incredible. And like Maurice Joshua sent me a record. But like I said, we have conversations and they tell me about the record. And it's not just a link that I'm filling out. Maurice sent me this record. Yeah. He sent me this record by this artist named Fat Cat, man. And I called Do It or Do It To, whatever it is. Man, I can't stop playing this record. It's so amazing. And then E Smooth sent the record called Feeling This. I just got it today. I wish I got it 2 days ago because I would have put it in my set. But I was just like,
you will next week.
I will next week. I told him. So I'm always digging. I'm always looking for new music. We weren't jukeboxes. We actually played new music and people wanted to hear us play just to hear what we was playing that was new. But with the internet, social media, and iTunes and streaming, everybody gets everything. But to me, you can get everything and not know what's good. You're overwhelmed.
The other problem is you need to trust your ears.
Right.
I've been saying this for a long time now. Don't go by because the record dropped off the chart. If the record's hot, it's hot. Because a lot of times, even over the last 45 years, okay, there's been records that were sleepers. One guy starts playing it and bam.
Look how long it took Follow Me or Black Coffee Superman. Black Coffee Superman was in 2009. It wasn't a hit till 2014.
Right.
So for me, when I go to Track Source, I don't even look at the numbers. I start at number 1 and go all the way to 100. And a lot of records that I play are like number 56, number 99, number 80.
Yeah, because you're listening. You're listening to the record. Does it work for me?
Exactly.
Not because it's in the top 20 or top 100. Who cares?
I don't know how it got there, so I don't trust that. It's always been like...
A lot of times, there's a lot of self-buying, too. There's a lot of self-buying going on. Yes, that is true. There's a lot of robotics going on in the AI world. Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that too. But hey, if the record is AI and it sounds good, I'm play it. I don't care.
That's it. I'm feeling the same way like you. If the record works,
You got to whack AI records out, but if the record is good, it fits in what I'm doing, I'm going to play it because that's what I do.
a good record is a good record.
And it, like you said earlier, it has to be a record that I think if I played it 5 years from now, it'll still be hot. I don't do trends. That's just a waste of time. I don't want to have to edit a record out of a mix that I've been saving to play 10 years from now. I'm like, oh shit, that didn't work. Let me take that out.
Listen, Charles, you're a plethora of information, and this can go on and on. I'm just going to leave it here. I mean, if you're not listening to his show on Sirius XM, you need to listen.
So that's Friday, 11 a.m. Saturday, it replays at 7 p.m. Monday at 6 p.m. and then Tuesday at midnight so that the West Coast can get it at 9 p.m. But it's all Eastern Standard Time. And I'll be on tomorrow, just remember, Saturday, 7 p.m. and Monday, 6 p.m. and midnight into Wednesday morning on Tuesday. So that's the show. And then you can follow me on my Instagram is just at DJ Sir Charles. I got no dashes, dots, numbers. I got in early when it started. So it's just,
Wait. One major question. Very important. Tonight's mix is mixed by Charles Mixin Dixon. Is that the same guy?
Sir Charles Mixin Dixon, Charles Dixon, the same guy. You know what? For years, when I worked at the record labels, a lot of DJs and even industry cast, they didn't know that Sir Charles Mixin Dixon or Charles Mixin Dixon is the same guy as Charles Dixon promoting the records. They were confused. It's like, okay, if you're working at a label, how can you be a DJ? So that went on for years. And then, I call him my cousin, Jay Mixin Dixon. He was, a lot of people got us confused too, and even Jay was like, Charles, man, can you lay back on the mix?
That's what I wanted to clarify. I want you to clarify that with Jay as well.
I told Jay this. I said, Jay, man, I never even liked Sir Charles because when I was in college, they said that I dressed like I was from the UK with tweed jackets and, button downs and layers and the whole polo look that I had. They said, you look like you're from London. You look like a Sir Charles. It was a joke. So that came from the way I dressed. And then because Dixon rhymes with Mixin, they called me that all the way through college, all the way through school, everywhere. And then when I got to New York, I did try to dial back on it, but then they started cutting promos on PLS saying, Sir Charles Mixin Dixon. And then same thing when I got to Sirius XM. I was like, okay, well, I guess this is the brand. So then a couple of times, me and Jay, we did stuff together. It's like the Dixons. That was kind of cool. We did what's that at club on Barrack Street. My brain is, I think I'm meeting my toast level. But anyway,
SOBs, everybody, SOBs.
We did I think Hernandez booked us to play and we played together. Now we took a picture together, but I love Jay. He's
See people, that's his family now. See, now we clarify that. We needed that clarified for years.
I think we may even be related. I mean, he's like West Indian, but I don't know. I saw some of his pictures look like some of my relatives. That Dixon part, we might be related, but
very possible somewhere in their lineage.
Great guy. He's one of the few people in the industry that I really adore. Like he's a really cool, intelligent cat, and he was consultant at BLS when I was there.
Yes, on the Skip Tillard, and he went on to Philly. Yes,
Skip is amazing. Skip is a genius. He's doing well with the Block 94. The Block, he's doing well with that. But he's one of the smartest radio programmers that I've ever met. Skip Tillard. He's genius.
On that note, Chuck,
I can go another 5 hours.
I know. We gotta leave that for another day. But you covered so much ground and landscape, and we love all the information and the insight tidbits that make you tick, and what makes you who you are. The go-getter, the pusher man, with a smile, the pusher man. Because you're always finagling. I could put this guy with this guy, and every time I hook up with you, we're always laughing. Like, we can make that guy come and do this thing. Like when you were doing stuff with Jeff Red, I remember you were always, another.
D-Train. I spoke to D-Train the other day. for his record, You're the One, there's a dance to it. And they contacted him and told him it's like his D-Train dance to You're the One. And he has videos of it. So I told him that there's a Christopher Williams remake, and he knew about that Steve Hurley did. So I played that, and then I started playing his record. He did a drop for me, but he was telling me about, working with you was like really cool. And, I love that record because you hired me to promote it now. And I still play it, man. That was a great record. So he has a new album coming out. He just sent it to me. I just got an email yesterday, so I'm going to listen to it and see what I can, help him with.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so proud to call someone like Charles Dixon a friend. Because not only is he a friend, he's also been a fan and a support of all of us throughout all of our years of making these records. And he champions the sound and believes in it. Some people come in and out with trends. He decided trendy is not what I'm into. I'm just into doing it right. On that note, Charles Dixon, we give you your flowers and thank you so much for being on True House Stories, and catch all your heroes on the best show that did it right. Take care, everyone. And thank you, Charles. Thank you again. Thank you. And to you, family. 26, we need it, baby. We need some love and success.
Yes,
yeah.